So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, the Detroit Lions have some high expectations in the 2023 season. There's a lot of players that we expect to have really good seasons, expect to impact this team very positively, as well as players that we expect to just play very good football this season. However, there are a number of Lions that are going into a make or break year. There's a number of Lions that are going into the 2023 season with the opportunity to get a new contract, get a bigger role on the offense or defense, have a more impactful role on the Detroit Lions as a whole. But if they're unable to do so, they might be phased out of this team or potentially let go from being a Detroit Lion. And today, I wanted to take a look at those players. Take a look at the players going into a make or break year in 2023. Talk about what they have to do to succeed and what might happen if they don't quite have the season that they need going into this year. So, with that being said, let's start off with one player that is coming off a couple of really good seasons, or was coming off a couple of really good seasons when he got re-signed, but has since really not been what the contract would entail. That player being Romeo Okoro. Now, to be fair, this is not necessarily 100% on Romeo Okoro. In the 2018 and 2020 seasons, Romeo Okoro led the Detroit Lions in sacks with 7.5 and 10 sacks, respectively. After that really impressive 2020 season where he totaled double-digit sacks for the first time in his career, the Detroit Lions and Brad Holmes ended up giving Romeo Okoro a 3-year extension. However, due to tearing his Achilles early in the 2021 season, Romeo Okoro has played just 9 games on that 3-year extension over 2 seasons and is going into his last year with a really big chip on his shoulder, as well as a lot of pressure to perform in the final year of a massive deal. Now, we know that Romeo Okoro can be great. We know that Romeo Okoro can be a 7.5 to 10 sack player, and we've seen it multiple times throughout his tenure with the Detroit Lions. That's what gave him a 3-year deal. That's what allowed him to have a huge role on the defense in 2020 and 2018, but he has yet to do that since signing a big contract. Now, again, Romeo Okoro did have an Achilles tear in week 4 of the 2021 season. That allowed him to play just 9 games of his new contract, and in those 9 games, he's totaled 3 sacks. And coming into 2023, he is healthy again. He is supposedly in the starting rotation again, and I believe he will be a starting edge rusher and a massive role player for the Detroit Lions in 2023. Plus, he's only 28 years old, so if he does perform, you can give him another 2 seasons and have him until he's 30 in his still athletic prime if he is 100% healthy. But if Romeo Okoro doesn't perform, if Romeo Okoro only has 3 or 4 sacks, if he has a very reduced role on the defense, if John Kaminsky or Josh Pascal or James Houston end up outproducing him and he becomes the edge rusher 4, edge rusher 5, there's a good chance that he's not going to return to the Detroit Lions in 2024, that he's not going to re-sign a contract this offseason and remain a member of the Detroit Lions pass rush. And it's really going to come down to how much he can produce in 2023 in regards to whether or not he's going to remain a Detroit Lion for 2024. Personally, I believe that Romeo Okoro is going to have a very good 2023 season. I think he's going to start alongside Aiden Hutchinson at that starting edge rusher position. And I think that those two are going to be really good for each other with a constant rotation of guys like Josh Pascal, John Kaminsky, and James Houston. I think that Romeo Okoro might not have the opportunity, might not have the number of snaps to get to 10 sacks, but I think shooting for 8 or 7 sacks is a very realistic number for Romeo Okoro coming back in his first full season since his Achilles injury over 2 years ago. Now, moving on to another player on the Lions defense going into a make or break season, I think Efe Obasih could potentially be on the chopping block. Being the 101st selection in the 2021 NFL draft, he has played just 17 games, 7 games as a rookie and 10 games as a second-year player. And in that time, he has switched positions. He has been on and off the field. He has been good in some games and not so good in other games. He's been kind of an up and down player for the Detroit Lions, but going into OTAs this year, he has quite a bit of hype around him. Dan Campbell has spoken very highly of Efe Obasih. Aaron Glenn has spoken very highly of the third-year defensive back, but I do think that position change really impacted Efe Obasih in more of a negative way than a positive way, right? Efe Obasih has 2 years left in his deal. He's a versatile defensive back that can play boundary cornerback or deep free safety and is very much liked by his teammates as well as the coaching staff. He's a playmaking defensive back who's really good with the football in the air, but isn't really the most physical of tacklers or the most physical of safeties, which is why I think the Detroit Lions should have left him at boundary cornerback. I think Efe Obasih can be a very good middle fielding free safety. I think he can be a guy that covers a lot of ground, takes away a lot of space in the passing game, but I think his tools, I think his skills, and I think his skill set would have been best utilized sticking at boundary cornerback. And I think this is where the Detroit Lions made a mistake. I think the Lions last year looked at Amani Oruwariye, looked at Jeff Okudah, looked at the rest of the secondary that they had and said, okay, well, we have our 2 boundary cornerbacks of the future. If Yatu's never going to see the field because, obviously Amani Oruwariye is a great defensive back, and Jeff Okudah, we have a lot of faith in him being the former number 3 overall pick that he's going to develop into a really good boundary cornerback. So in the offseason, they moved Efe Obasih over to safety, where I think he took a lot of time to learn the position. I think he had a very bumpy road when it came to transitioning from cornerback to safety. Now, Efe Obasih had a full offseason at safety, hasn't played cornerback in over a year, and then all of a sudden, Amani Oruwariye struggles, and then all of a sudden, Jeff Okudah struggles, and he gets hurt. And then the secondary ranks bottom 5 in the NFL because they don't have a really good boundary cornerback. You know who could have been a really good boundary cornerback for the Detroit Lions had he been healthy? Efe Obasih, as when he played that as a rookie defensive back, a third-round selection, he had 15 tackles, 3 passes defended, and 2 fumble recoveries. He was in good position almost every single time and had multiple pass defended versus Davante Adams, one of the best wide receivers in football at the time. And Efe Obasih was a guy who went up one-on-one versus Davante Adams, a guy that went up 1v1 versus DK Metcalf and won some of those battles. And the Lions decided to move him over to safety. I think if they left him at boundary cornerback, he could be boundary cornerback number 1. He could be the number 1 cornerback on this roster right now had the Detroit Lions not stunted his growth by moving him to safety. Now, I do think Efe Obasih was going to have a role in the defense this season, but I don't know exactly where it's going to be. Dan Campbell has said multiple times that the defense will be better with Efe Obasih on the field, but I don't know if that's going to be as a free safety in rotation with Tracy Walker. I don't know if that's going to be a boundary cornerback in rotation with Cam Sutton and Emmanuel Mosley. I don't know if that's going to be a hybrid role, like something that maybe Will Harris has played over the last couple of years. But I do know that there's a lot of competition in the secondary. I know that Cam Sutton's brand new. I know that Emmanuel Mosley is brand new, that CJ Gardner-Johnson is brand new, that Jerry Jacobs is coming in for really his first full season, but as a third-year defensive back that's played a lot of snaps over his last 2 seasons. I know in the safety room, Tracy Walker's not going anywhere. That Kirby Joseph isn't going anywhere, that, CJ Gardner-Johnson, like I said, is a brand new safety in that secondary room. So I'm not really sure exactly where Efe Obasih was going to find his way onto the field, despite being a really good defensive back when he's on the field. Efe Obasih was played 17 games, has 5 passes defended, 2 fumble recoveries, a tackle for loss, and a half a sack through 2, I'd say, half seasons as a cornerback and safety. And he's been a productive defensive back. He's been a playmaking defensive back for this team. But now looking at the roles on this defense, where does Efe Obasih fit? And with 2 years left and a lot of big contracts in the secondary, where is he going to break through and find his spot on the field to be that playmaking defensive back? Because it's one thing to do it in practice. It's one thing to do it in OTAs. It's one thing to do it in the preseason. But contracts matter, right? Where is Ifeatu going to find himself on the field in 2 seasons? And if he can't, then he's probably not going to be a member of the Detroit Lions for too much longer. Now, sticking with the defensive side of the ball, I want to talk about Josh Pascal today. Now, a lot of people are going to say, what? Josh Pascal, the 46th overall pick from the 2022 draft, a player going into his second year that showed a lot of flashes and high potential in 2022, his rookie year? And I would say yes. Josh Pascal, a player that had injury concerns coming into 2022 and had missed and played only 10 games as a rookie. Now, again, Josh Pascal showed a lot of flashes. Josh Pascal made a couple starts and made a couple really big plays for the Detroit Lions defense. His game versus Dallas, his second game versus the Chicago Bears were phenomenal games and showed exactly why he was a top 50 pick and projected by some to be a first-round pick in the 2023 draft. He had 16 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and 4 quarterback hits in 2022, along with 6 pressures on the quarterback on top of that. Aaron Glenn has come out multiple times that he expects a big step forward of Josh Pascal in 2023, as well as for him to stay healthy and stay on the football field. But I think the concern comes from the quality of depth the Detroit Lions have. Romeo Okoro, a player we've already talked about, is going to probably start and have a big role in the defense. You're not going to take John Kaminsky off the field very often because he's the glue that keeps this defense together. James Houston and Aiden Hutchinson were the two most productive rookies in the 2022 draft class, the draft class that Josh Pascal is from. Julian Okwara has shown some flashes. Charles Harris has shown some flashes. And although Josh Pascal is not going anywhere, right? Josh Pascal is in the second year of a 4-year contract. He's not going anywhere if he doesn't get on the field in 2022. But I do think if he doesn't produce, if he doesn't beat out guys like Julian Okwara, if he doesn't beat out guys like Charles Harris, if he doesn't necessarily compete for time and get a respectable amount of playing time similar to Romeo Okwara, I think he could potentially start to get phased out in this defense, right? Aiden Hutchinson's flashy. Aiden Hutchinson's the big name. James Houston genuinely could hit double digits, even 15, 16 sacks if he gets the right opportunities in 2022. John Kaminsky signed a 2-year deal as a kind of, in-between guy that can play inside, outside, and is going to be a glue guy, maybe even a captain of the defense in 2022, which might not leave Josh Pascal with the most opportunity if he can't seem to put it together this season. Now, make or break might be a little bit of an exaggeration for Josh Pascal. I think that once Romeo Okwara's contract is up, once that Charles Harris contract is up, once the Julian Okwara contract is up, Josh Pascal is going to have a much clearer shot to playing time. But if you're going into your 3rd season as a rookie and you really haven't played very much, you haven't played very significant snaps, who's to say that the Detroit Lions aren't going to go out and get somebody better? Who's to say they're not going to go out and get a more consistent edge rusher too alongside Aiden Hutchinson? Who's going to say they're not going to go get somebody else to replace the production that Josh Pascal has brought if he only has 5 or 6 sacks across 2 seasons on his rookie contract? I think Josh Pascal has a deceptively high amount of pressure on him this year, despite being a former top 50 pick and despite going into a second year after showing a ton of flashes. Now, again, I believe in Josh Pascal. I think Josh Pascal is going to be a great player, and I think he's going to be a great edge rusher for the Detroit Lions in 2023. But if he struggles, you could start to see some people come out and call him a bust after just 2 seasons. And you could start to see the Detroit Lions plan around him not being that guy of the future for too much longer. Now, the last player I want to talk about today is going to be controversial. That is going to be Jared Goff, the starting quarterback of the Detroit Lions, the team captain, the guy that just led the Detroit Lions to their first winning season since 2017. Yes, this guy is under a tremendous amount of pressure. He has 2 years left on his contract, and after being traded to the Detroit Lions in the 2021 offseason, was labeled as a bridge quarterback. Was labeled as a quarterback that probably wasn't going to take the Lions to the Super Bowl, probably wasn't going to take the Detroit Lions to the playoffs, and probably wasn't going to be the Detroit Lions quarterback past the 2023 season anyway. Now, Jared Goff struggled in 2021, but was great in 2022, throwing for 4,438 yards, 29 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Jared Goff was a statistical top 10 quarterback in 2021 and took a very struggling Detroit Lions team in 2021 with a 3-13-1 record to a very very hyped up and very competitive Detroit Lions team in 2022, leading them to a 9-8 record, as I said, the first winning record in over half a decade for the Honolulu Blue. So for a player that just took a massive step in 2022, a player that just led the Detroit Lions to a winning record, a player that just had a top 10 quarterbacking season, why is Jared Goff in a make or break year? Well, he has 2 years left on his contract this year as well as 2024, but the Detroit Lions can opt out of his contract after this season with very minimal dead cap and very minimal repercussions. The Detroit Lions just drafted Hendon Hooker, a quarterback out of Tennessee who has a tremendous deep ball, a very quick processor, a very quick release, and despite being 25 years old, could potentially be a cheaper, better option of Jared Goff, right? I think he does a lot of things Jared Goff does well, but I think he has a better deep ball. I think he's obviously a little bit younger. He's going to be significantly cheaper than Jared Goff. And with some massive contracts on the horizon, having a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal could be a very, very instrumental to the Detroit Lions building a Super Bowl roster and a sustainable roster for the next several years. Now, Jared Goff has had a ton of flashes throughout his career. I think Jared Goff is a genuine top 10, top 12 quarterback in the NFL, undisputedly. But he's had some years where his confidence has waned, and he's had some year where his consistency has dropped. Right? He's had some seasons that have been really good, MVP caliber numbers, and he's had some seasons where he's been probably a bottom 10 quarterback by the numbers. So Jared Goff, his inconsistency is concerning. The fact that he's already 30 is a little bit concerning. The fact that he is already on a massive contract and you're probably going to have to pay him $45 to $50 million a year on his next extension is concerning when you have a high ceiling quarterback like Hendon Hooker on the roster for a rookie contract. Financially, it's going to make a lot more sense for the Detroit Lions to go with Hendon Hooker if that is an option over Jared Goff, who, as I said, is going to cost $50 million a season. Now, if Jared Goff can put together another really good 2023, Jared Goff can throw for 4,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, less than 10 picks, I think Jared Goff might be the guy going forward. If Jared Goff can lead the Lions to a division title, if he can lead the Detroit Lions to a playoff win, hosting a playoff game, and all the success we expect from them this season, it's going to be hard to move on from him. But regardless of how well Jared Goff plays, there's always going to be that overarching thought of, okay, Hendon Hooker's cheaper. Hendon Hooker might be able to do the exact same things that Jared Goff is doing, even if Jared Goff might be a little bit more experienced, might be a better leader. There's nothing saying Hendon Hooker can't do all the things Jared Goff can do, even at a higher level for a cheaper price. So I think Jared Goff for the next 2 seasons is going to be under a lot of scrutiny. He's going to be under a lot of pressure, and he's going to be talked about a lot as a player that could potentially be on the move and could be potentially playing his last season and last games in Detroit. But I also think that there's a very real path where Jared Goff is the starter for a long time, gets a big deal, and the Lions continue down the path with number 16 under center for a very long time. So with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Those are my make or break players for the 2023 season for the Detroit Lions. Some players might not get a new contract. Some players might get cut if they don't perform very well in 2023. And some players might just fade off and have a less significant role despite still being on the roster for 2 to 3 seasons left. But with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below your make or break players. What players do you think are going to perform? What players do you think are going to fall short of expectations? And what players do you think have the most pressure on them going into the 2023 year for the Detroit Lions? I'd be very curious what you guys have to say and what you guys think. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. If you enjoyed the content, please make sure you're down below and subscribe and like the video. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.